I'm Nima Rajan. Governor General Mary Simon agreed to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's request to dissolve Parliament on Sunday, triggering a federal election campaign. Canadians are set to go to the polls on September 20th.
After making it through 17 months of nothing like we've ever experienced, Canadians deserve to choose what the next 17 months, what the next 17 years and beyond will look like.
Opposition leaders have argued that plunging into an election during the health crisis is both unnecessary and reckless. At dissolution, the Liberals had 155 seats, the Conservatives 119, the Bloc Québécois 32, the NDP 24, and the Greens 2. There were also 5 independents and 1 vacancy. Canada's embassy in Kabul is shut down. Canada says the current situation in Afghanistan poses serious challenges to its ability to ensure safety and security at the embassy in Kabul, so it's closing down and suspending diplomatic operations. The Taliban have seized control of the capital city following a week-long offensive that saw insurgents overthrow nearly the entire country following the withdrawal of Western troops. The Department of National Defense has launched an online tool to help staff keep track of efforts to improve culture within the ranks. The department says part of the effort to create a respectful, healthy workplace includes taking steps to improve internal culture and sharing those steps with military members and the broader Canadian public. Many Canadian parents are worried COVID-19 infections among children will soar with the start of the new school year. The lead investigator in a Canadian Institute of Health research study on COVID-19 outcomes in kids says most children who test positive will only experience mild illness. Dr. Stephen Friedman, who is a pediatric emergency physician at Alberta Children's Hospital, says in rare cases, kids infected with COVID-19 can experience symptoms including fatigue, dizziness, and headaches. Dr. Friedman says reintroducing mask mandates may need to be considered when kids return to school. The average annual cost of insurance claims related to severe weather has quadrupled in the past decade. The Insurance Bureau of Canada is attributing the costs to climate change. The Bureau's Vice President of Federal Affairs, Craig Stewart, says Canadians must also face hard decisions about strategic relocation away from high-risk areas. Real estate agents have a role to play too, he says, pointing to U.S. brokerage Redfin, which recently announced it is making climate risk information available on its listings. Several of BC's 270 active wildfires intensified due to high winds over the weekend, prompting the evacuation of hundreds of properties. The township of Spallamcheen ordered numerous properties to evacuate as the White Rock Lake fire pushed forward. Meanwhile, the sudden growth of the Tremont Creek wildfire spurred Kamloops to issue evacuation orders for more than 700 properties. A 3-member team in Edmonton providing harm reduction supplies to the city's homeless community says they've never seen the opioid crisis this bad. Boots on the ground has been reversing overdoses every week since the COVID-19 pandemic began. And it says the number of deaths due to drug poisoning has reached record-breaking levels. Alberta's government reported 442 deaths in the province due to drug poisoning during the first 5 months of 2020, while in 2021, that number jumped to 624 deaths over the same time period. Ontario's daily COVID-19 case count continues to hover over the 500 mark. The province reported 511 new cases on Sunday based on just over 19,000 tests. Health Minister Christine Elliott says 350 of the infected people are unvaccinated and 67 are only partially immunized. There are 116 patients hospitalized in Ontario with COVID-19 related critical illnesses and 71 patients are on ventilators. Pandemic working conditions in Quebec hospitals have reportedly prompted many newly graduated nurses to reconsider their career path. The Quebec Nurses Association says the health crisis has forced many members to work mandatory overtime. This is resulting in a lot of new nurses getting burnt out after 5 or 6 months on the job and leaving for the private sector for better hours and better pay. Well, it's the final day of Nova Scotia's election campaign, with the 3 main party leaders focusing on key ridings. Yesterday saw NDP leader Gary Burrill in the Halifax area, where he talked about the need for rent control to protect people from large increases. In Cape Breton, Progressive Conservative leader Tim Houston highlighted the need to improve the province's healthcare system. And Liberal leader Ian Rankin appeared to be with his wife, Mary, in Berwick, where they talked about his party's plan to expand the number of midwives working in the province. All right, stay with us. Up next, we will take a deeper look into the start of the 2021 federal election campaign after the break. An interview with Boom and Bust's Tony Clement coming up next. That and, of course, more news from around the world on the Forum Daily. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau visited Rideau Hall on Sunday to ask Governor General Mary Simon to dissolve Parliament for a 36-day campaign. Election Day is set for September 20th. The Liberal leader told a news conference that Canadians must choose their future, and it's up to the opposition parties to explain why they shouldn't have that choice. Opposition leaders have reacted negatively to the call, citing the current health crisis. Joining us now to unpack the story is Tony Clement, the host of Boom and Bust. Welcome back to Forum Daily, Tony.
Always a pleasure, Nima.
Now, sources have been hinting at an early election for a while now. So from your understanding, what was the rationale behind the election call?
Well, I believe the real rationale of the prime minister was he thinks he can win, and he thinks he can win a majority. I think a further calculation on his part is things aren't necessarily going to get better. We could be we are in the midst of a fourth wave, that could get far worse. Later on in the fall. The economy could be far worse later on in the fall. So I think he just figured out that this was as good a time as any to go to the polls to try to get his coveted majority government.
And we mentioned opposition party leaders are also not really reacting positively to this election call. How do the other parties stack up in terms of election readiness here?
Yeah, well, although this has not been a popular decision by the prime minister, it comes as no surprise. And so the other political parties and the Liberal Party have been organizing for just such an event. So I think the Conservative Party has upwards of 300 candidates out of 338 already chosen by their respective riding associations. I think the Liberals are behind that. I think they're around 270 or so. So they still have a little bit of work to do to nominate candidates. And the NDP have under 150. So they have to really work hard in the next few days to get more candidates. In terms of money, the Conservatives have double the war chest of the Liberal Party. They've been very adept at fundraising over the last few years, and that includes even during COVID. And so they've got a war chest of $13.5 million, double what the Liberals have. The NDP and the Green Party parties are well behind that. So I think the Conservative Party is in a good position, but of course they have to win the votes of Canadians. So that's their next job.
Let's dig into the campaign strategies now, Tony. What is each party likely to highlight as its unique selling point for voters?
Well, the Conservative Party has as their sort of tagline, secure the future, which tells you a little bit about what their strategy is. Incidentally, they just released a 160-page platform today. And there's a lot of detail in there. I've skimmed through it right now. I haven't gone through it in major detail. We'll be doing so. But they've promised billions of new dollars to help small businesses in particular survive the pandemic and be ready to fully reopen, particularly in the tourism and hotel and restaurant sector, but other sectors as well. So they're basically running on an economic plan to bring security to all Canadians. The Liberals, I believe their slogan is forward for everyone. And again, that tells you a little bit about what their strategy is. They want to be inclusive. They want to move forward on their agenda that they've already enunciated in Parliament with their most recent budget. So that means childcare, housing, reconciliation for Indigenous, the environment, and so on. The NDP message is really interesting. Basically, they're saying, look, the other parties are just the same. If you really want real change, you have to choose us. So it'll be interesting to see how these play out, certainly.
Now, considering that this election is being called during the summer as Canada has entered the fourth wave of the COVID-19 health crisis, how will these factors impact the election overall?
Yeah, this is going to be one of the big questions having this pandemic election. And right now, the Liberals are sitting pretty. 49% of Canadians, when polled, say that they did a good job dealing with the pandemic. If that number starts to slide, if cases really skyrocket, then that could be an additional factor that could lead to the Liberals' demise. So we'll have to wait and see. I think the Conservatives are saying, yeah, pandemic, vaccines, et cetera, but we're looking to the future, and here's our economic plan for the future. So it'll be interesting to see what Canadians decide. Are they going to vote on past performance with the Liberal government, or are they going to vote for future promises with the Conservative opposition?
Well, we'll definitely have to keep an eye on that, Tony. Always great having you on Forum Daily, and we'll see you again on the show soon, Tony.
Absolutely.
Take care. Now stay with us. Up next, we take a look at the shocking details of the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, which was released last week. We'll have an interview with one of the Canadian researchers behind this report, Dr. Zubin Zhang, coming up next. That and, of course, more news from around the world only on Forum Daily, so stay with us. We'll be back after this short break. A more than 3,000-page report from 234 researchers says global warming is already accelerating sea level rise, shrinking ice, and worsening extremes. The United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, released last week, says Earth's climate is getting so hot the temperature limits set in the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement will be surpassed in about a decade. The report says as the planet warms, places will get hit more, not just by extreme weather, but by multiple climate disasters that occur simultaneously. Well, joining us now to talk more on this is Dr. Zubin Zhang from Environment and Climate Change Canada. He is also one of the researchers behind this report. Dr. Zhang, welcome to Forum Daily.
Thank you.
Now, let's start with a quick overview of this report and the key takeaways.
So if we look at the key takeaways, there are many different kind of things, but what I can see what I can say is, first of all, the changes that we see, such as in weather and climate extremes, is very widespread. It affects every region in the world. It's not just here in Canada. It is the United States, it is Asia, in South America and Africa. We are not alone. So this is really a widespread and global phenomenon. And we know what happens, and we can attribute these changes to human influence. And additionally, our future really is in our hand. We know that every bit of warming is important. Every bit of additional warming is associated with additional changes in weather climate extremes. And in the future, we'll be hit not just by one extreme, but by changes in multiple different things at the same time.
Some very concerning information there, Doctor. Now, as you mentioned, this report refers to this issue as human-caused. So how are humans connected to this change in climate conditions?
Well, we emit what we call greenhouse gases. This includes like carbon dioxide. When we emit this kind of gases into the atmosphere, they act just as a greenhouse gases. So if we add more, it helps us to trap more heat in the atmosphere. That we're warming up the surface of the Earth.
Now, this report, it's interesting that it indicates that the world will cross the 1.5 Celsius warming mark in the 2030s. And we actually need to prepare for going into that level of warming. So what kind of steps need to be taken to prepare, Doctor?
Well, obviously, emission reduction is a key to reduce warming in the future. That's a very important point. And so for that, we will need to really find a way to have deep cut in the emissions. And there is a good chance the global mean surface temperature will go above 1 degree compared to the pre-industrial level if we don't cut emissions. Another fairly important action we need to take is to actually adapt to changes. The warming is here to stay. Even at the 1.5 degree warming level, that's the Paris Agreement, the world will still be different from today. There will continue to be more heat waves, with possibly more and severe wildfire and droughts, heavier precipitations that come with more floods and so on. So we need to take steps to reduce possible damages by such expected increases in weather climate extremes, which means that we do need to take many steps to adapt ourselves to the new climate.
All right, sir, just about a minute 30 left, but I really want to dig into the proof behind the facts here. So what kind of proof do we have that connects climate change to extreme weather conditions?
Well, we can ask questions what this kind of extremes of weather might be without human influence. And then we can see what that might happen without human influence. So there are different kind of proofs. One is that if we run climate models with or without human influence in that, we will see the increase in the in climate extremes in its frequency or in its severity. And additionally, we have seen past changes over many places over many years. And with all these kind of years of information data, and we compare with what we understand and what computer model might tell us and what the physical understanding we have, and we get what we consider to be a proof of human influence on changes in weather and climate change.
All right, sir, just about 30 seconds left, but what kind of steps need to be taken by officials and Canadians, individual Canadians, to tackle this issue, sir?
Well, certainly I'm not an expert on emissions or climate change adaptation, but there are two steps we need to take. So the first is that every action we can take to reduce emission will contribute to that. The secondly, everyone will need to think about how we can adapt to the changing climate. What's going to happen if temperature in my city is going to be 2 degrees higher than what we are here? So that's give you some idea that you can think about.
Thousands are packing into the Afghan capital's airport in attempts to flee the country after the Taliban overthrew the Western-backed government. U.S. officials said the chaos at the airport left at least 7 people dead. The Taliban swept into Kabul on Sunday after President Ashraf Ghani fled the country. The country's Western-trained security forces collapsed or fled in the face of an insurgent offensive that tore through the country in just over a week. In the capital Monday, a tense calm set in, with most people hiding in their homes. The Taliban deployed fighters at major intersections. Meanwhile, British lawmakers are being called back from their summer break to Parliament to discuss the worsening situation in Afghanistan. Authorities said on Sunday that Parliament will be recalled for one day Wednesday to debate the government's response to the crisis. Many lawmakers have criticized Mr. Johnson's government of abandoning Afghanistan, but Britain's government has maintained that the UK could not continue its mission once the US announced its departure. Nearly 1,300 people are now confirmed dead following a 7.2 magnitude earthquake in Haiti that also left at least 5,700 people injured. Thousands have been displaced, with some survivors forced to wait out in the open for help from overburdened hospitals. The region could see even more damage this week, with Tropical Depression Grace predicted to reach Haiti tonight, bringing the potential for heavy rain, flooding, and landslides. The last living leader from the inner circle of Cambodia's brutal Khmer Rouge regime is appearing in a Phnom Penh courtroom today. He is trying to convince a long-running international tribunal to overturn his conviction on charges of genocide. Now 90 years old, Khieu Samphan was the former head of state for the radical communist regime that ruled Cambodia from 1975 to 1979. He was responsible for the deaths of an estimated 1.7 million people. His defense team is seeking to overturn a 2018 verdict finding him guilty of genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes, questioning the evidence and arguing that there were procedural mistakes. Malaysian Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin has resigned after less than 18 months in power. He apologized for his shortcomings, but blamed those he said were hungry for power. Mr. Muhyiddin says he hoped to stay on until the coronavirus vaccination program is completed and the economy has recovered. But he conceded that he had lost majority support to govern. The king ruled out new elections because of the pandemic and appointed him as caretaker prime minister until a successor is found. Malaysia has one of the world's highest infection rates and deaths per capita, despite a 7-month state of emergency and a lockdown since June. Zambia's veteran opposition leader Hakainde Hichilema has won the southern African country's presidency after taking more than 50% of the vote. Mr. Hichilema was declared president-elect by the chairman of the Electoral Commission of Zambia early Monday. Mr. Hichilema, a 59-year-old businessman contesting the presidency for the 6th time, got more than 2.8 million votes to President Edgar Lungu's 1.8 million votes, achieving one of the biggest electoral wins in Zambia's history. A Hong Kong pro-democracy group that organized some of the biggest protests during months of political upheaval in 2019 says it is dissolving. The Hong Kong Civil Human Rights Front said Sunday that it could no longer operate. Local media reported the group faces a police investigation for possible violation of a national security law. Since the national security law was enacted, many unions, associations, and political organizations have been disbanded amid concerns that the law could be used to target them. Greek authorities have deployed firefighting assets to a blaze that has broken out in the Keratea region southeast of Athens. Authorities have ordered the evacuation of 3 settlements in the area. Greece has been roiled by wildfires for about 2 weeks. They have destroyed tens of thousands of hectares of forest and farmland and burned homes and businesses. Several Mediterranean countries have suffered intense heat and quickly spreading wildfires in recent weeks, including Turkey and Italy. In Algeria, wildfires have killed at least 69 people. The World Health Organization says a patient has tested positive for Ebola in Abidjan, a city in Ivory Coast of more than 4 million people. The 18-year-old woman with Ebola had arrived Thursday by bus from the neighboring Guinea, where authorities had declared an end to another Ebola outbreak back in June. WHO said it was not immediately known whether the Ivory Coast case is linked to the earlier outbreak in Guinea. Ivory Coast has not had a confirmed case of Ebola in more than 25 years. The Biden administration has approved the largest single increase to the level of food stamps assistance in the program's history. Starting in October, average benefits for food stamps, officially known as the SNAP program, will rise more than 25% above pre-pandemic levels. The increased assistance will be available indefinitely to all 42 million SNAP beneficiaries. All right, I'm Nima Rajan, and that'll do it for your look at national and international news for today. Take care, Canada. We'll see you next time.